BBC One Northern Ireland, and that's after a trip down memory lane with Austin O'Callaghan.
For hundreds of years, the mountains of Mourne have inspired countless stories, poems and songs. Yet when it comes to leaving a lasting impression in this part of the world, these mountains have a rival. In 1960, a group of Down Gaelic footballers began a journey on this pitch, the old county ground here in Newcastle. When it ended, what they had achieved inspired generations of footballers who followed. Their names aren't just carved onto Mourne granite, they're etched into GAA history.
Never before in over 7 decades of GAA history was a victory so widely acclaimed. Down had changed the seemingly unalterable course of history and humbled the greatest football county of them all in the process. Kevin Musson has become the first man from across the border to receive the Sam Maguire Cup and to be congratulated by Uachtaráin na hÉireann. What a momentous occasion this is. Not only for Kevin and his teammates, not only for the wildly exuberant supporters of the Stars of the County Down, but for every man in Ireland. The unrestrained scenes of exultation continued for several minutes after the game had ended, and the men, women, and the children too, from the mountains of Mourne, rightly decided that this was a fitting occasion for a special parade of their own. And every heart in Ireland, especially those of Kerry, the fallen champions, echoed the foremost sentiment of the day. Céad do míle fáilte agus cógardachas do léachra an dúig.
St Colman's College in Newry, a school with a rich Gaelic football tradition. Several of the Down players were educated here. They're back to meet the current McCrory Cup side. This is where most of the team assembled on the morning of the All-Ireland final 50 years ago. And today, they're going to take that journey to Croke Park again. There were a few absentees on the morning of the journey. Illness prevented Seamus Kennedy from travelling. George Lavery, Sean O'Neill and John Hohian didn't take part for personal reasons. James Fitzpatrick lives in Canada. What sort of memories did that bring back for you?
Fascinating. The very first McCrory Cup team, Wildhead team to win, I happened to have the good luck to be on it. So it was great to see that again. And I was along with Leo.
Oh, where's Leo Murphy there? Leo.
Leo features prominently in 2 or 3 later on, along with my brother.
Now, the reason for going to St Colman's was just for handiness, really. At that time, people all went to Mass, so it was a handy place to have the Mass, and the college very decently offered it to us, and so many of their own past people that were playing, the McCartans and Liam Murphy and Patsy O'Hagan, that it was a sort of a welcome home for them too.
For years we had various drivers that would collect it, and the late Danny Flynn, who happened to train us, would always have picked myself up, Pat Rice and Patsy O'Hagan, and we would have travelled everywhere together in his car. So he picked us up and took us there. Could very well be that we went straight to the hotel and not to Mass.
But there was Mass said.
So I believe.
Getting back this morning now takes it all back. Though we left the O'Hare Hotel on Hill Street, we left from there. We didn't leave from the college. There wasn't that many about that morning we're leaving. You'd imagine the crowds would be about nowadays if a team was leaving for the final in the middle of Main Street, you know. But it was an absolutely great day, and it was great to be part of the panel.
Where did you sit on the bus in 1960?
I didn't. I was doing the September handicap, repeating an exam in Dublin, so I came across from the digs instead and on a bus to meet them at the hotel.
So did you feel detached a bit that weekend because you weren't with them on the journey going down?
Well, I probably felt detached most of the time because I was a student in Dublin while they were training here in the north, and I had actually trained with Lansdowne Rugby Club, and I also at the time, because there was during the summer when there was no training for the rugby boys, I played soccer and rugby myself with this college I was in. illegally, like I got suspended, but nobody. I played on my Christian names are Brian Mooney Daniel, so I played on the Brian Mooney, and nobody knew me at that stage. There was no televisions, so people didn't know you as well as they would nowadays. You wouldn't get away with nowadays, but I got away with then.
Was there much crack on the bus on the way down?
We just prayed. We just prayed and hoping that everything would go well. That's what I meant.
We stopped in the Clare Manor and we stopped in another one. I just can't mind the name of it now.
The Maples? No.
Yes, the Maples. It's just a wee bit up to the right of Croke Park, and when we were out there, we were kicking football on the road, and the Garda came up and notebooks out and all, they were going to prosecute us, and Morris came over and says, that's the Down team you're prosecuting. So
you nearly got arrested on the morning of the All-Ireland?
Nearly got arrested.
On the day of our journey, of the 15 players who started the 1960 final, 3 were deceased: Breen Morgan, Jarlath Carey and Pat Rice. Patricia, what do you think Dad would have made of this sort of get-together?
He would have loved it. He would have really enjoyed it. I think the main thing that we sort of picked up from the team was the friendship between them all, and I think he would have really enjoyed it.
Every match we went, I always would make a point that if Patricia Small wasn't going, I was forcing the car, because the people you met at the games, and if you're walking past, they say, oh, there's Pat Rice, and it made you feel very humble that you were alongside him, and it was great, absolutely brilliant on the dues you went in.
He was very, very proud of it and realised how lucky he was to be part of that team. And he would often talk about the very, very good footballers who were never lucky enough to get an All-Ireland medal, so many of them. So he was very grateful that he was part of the whole thing. And in those days, strangely enough, Jarlath was quite an unusual name, and it seemed to stick in people's minds.
He also had a very bad haircut. I remember meeting a priest in the Irish College in Leuven in Belgium, of all people, and he was a football fan from the 60s, and he heard the name and he knew it was from the north, and said, "You're nothing to that fella that played for Down with the long flowing locks." So I think that maybe helped him stand out a bit as well.
But you're continuing today?
Yes.
Well, I just thought in honour. I did it great, especially.
Did doctors get nervous on All-Ireland final day, or a different sort of responsibility for you, was it?
Way back in 1960, we didn't have to worry about psychologists, people like that. There didn't seem to be a need for them then. And certainly dealing with a squad in 1960 compared to this present century, you didn't have to worry about them drinking. For example, there was no ban on, no necessary. It wasn't necessary to have a ban on drinking, and you never thought of that, really. The players were totally committed. They were a lovely bunch of players, and in my experience, every successful team that we've had, they've always been a very humble group of players, no prima donnas, but every player would play their heart out, not only for themselves and the jersey, but for their comrades.
You're making them sound like a dream team.
Well, they were a dream team. There's no doubt about that. And I mean, they were better than we realised.
And they didn't worry about dietitians either. When the team arrived at the Maples Hotel, the pre-match breakfast wasn't modern-day fare. The players ate steak.
There was a sort of notion at that time you should play on an empty stomach. You get sort of tea and biscuits before the match, and as if that weren't bad enough, you then get ham salad afterwards, So we threw that away. Basically, we were trying to give people what not everybody wanted a steak. I mean, some people want a poached egg or something like that, but by and large, most of them wanted steaks, and they had their steak before the match and burned off their energy then with that, and it didn't seem to do any of them any harm. We had some players that you knew were exceptional players. I mean, you knew that Paddy Doherty was a match winner. You knew that Sean O'Neill was a match winner on a day. But, I mean, to be match winners, they needed 9 or 10 or a dozen other people to be operating at a high level of efficiency too. And on a day when one good player was sort of being kept quiet,